My name is Mitch Joel. I'm the president of Twisty Manage. We're a digital marketing communications agency with offices in Montreal and Toronto. I also blog and podcast over at 6 Pixels of Separation. And I've got a book coming out in fall 09 called 6 Pixels of Separation. People are very excited to see like, what should we do with the blog and what should we do on Twitter and what should we do on Facebook or YouTube. And my general question isn't what should you be doing, but why? Why should you be blogging? Why should you be on Twitter? Why should you be on Facebook? Because why is about understanding strategically what you're trying to do. What is a tactic? So, like being on YouTube or being in Facebook it's great. I mean, it's powerful if you know why you're there and what you're trying to accomplish from that standpoint. So for me, the sort of best practice is have a strategy in place. Understand what your business goals are, what you're trying to accomplish with them, how you're trying to connect, and then figure out what you would do with the internet to make that easier and more effective for you. And then once that's done, really take a look at who you're trying to speak to and where they are and how you can communicate to them in those channels. I think the first thing to understand is that it's not really like, what's the best thing to do. It's a sort of acknowledgement that you don't have a choice. People are talking about brands and products and services online. They mention them in their profiles. You could go on Twitter at any given time and see a ton of brands being spoken about. And so, from my perspective, it's more a question of what are they saying and what's your ability to respond to that. Understanding full well that people are busy, and I think that people are busy and they have their sort of standard operating procedures based off of the old school mass media model, which is, we produce a message and we buy media space and we blast it out to millions of people, and we hope at the end of that it's effective and that it worked, and if not, we'll buy some more, or even if it does work, maybe we'll buy even more, and they sort of have that connection. With these online channels, it's a little bit more personal, it's a little bit more different, and I think that what really needs to happen to get to that point is you need to have internally a cultural shift, and the cultural shift has to be more about bringing together customer service and marketing, and it's more about bringing together marketing and business development, and it's more about making technology like air and making it not be a problem or a stumbling block for a consumer to connect to you. And so when brands and businesses embrace that idea, I find that they are much more effective at marketing their message more effectively. The other thing it does is it forces us as business owners to be human, which I guess sounds sort of anathema to life, but it's really important to understand. We tend to talk in our own industry jargon, we tend to communicate in those ways, and I think these new channels force people to create real interactions with people. Mm-hmm. And I like that. I mean, that's why I like marketing. It's a dramatic shift, and so when it's a dramatic shift, it becomes more complex to do. I think what I've seen historically in terms of successful businesses that have done this is really about listening a lot. It's about monitoring and listening and understanding who are these voices and what value do they have, and are they important, and is it relevant, is it not relevant, how relevant? If we respond, can we actually shift our business to change and to be effective at that? And so, they become really complex questions for big organizations with one or two people saying things online that they happen to have an audience, and so it spreads a lot. The advantage is really for the smaller companies, believe it or not. It's easier to shift and move, and it's easier to be more personable because smaller businesses are hungry. They're passionate about growing their consumer base. They're willing to try other things that they maybe couldn't do before. And again, you really have to understand that culturally, it's difficult to tell a huge company that's been pumping billions into mass media that suddenly every single individual's voice matters and you need to be listening and interacting with that. That all being said, they don't have a choice still, so they have to. And so we're in the middle of a big change, and I think part of it is a lot of people like me get up and speak and say all these things. But saying things and doing things are two very different things. And so that's sort of the big challenge where I'm the first to admit at Twisty Manage, when we sit down with our clients, it's a lot of traditional online marketing. It's a lot of building websites and building their database and understanding who's coming to their site and what they're doing and why, and how can we convert that and make it more effective and get better at that. And then, breaching the subject of these conversational channels and what it means to be in them and why it's important and how to do it. There's I think a heavy misconception in the industry that my agency just does the social media stuff, and it accounts for maybe 10% of our business at most. The counter to that is that I use these channels to build our business. And I think that's where the confusion probably is through my blog and podcast, which is like the speaking and book deals and stuff like that. We don't use traditional advertising to communicate who we are. We use the channels to communicate who we are passionately. And so that's a bit of the disconnect. And that's the message too, isn't it? That, how can businesses transition? Start trying some of them. See which ones feel right. See which ones make the most sense. The beauty of the digital channel is that we're not just talking about text. We're talking about audio, video, images, and text. And so, we use the word multimedia, which seems very 1988, doesn't it? But, this is a multimedia content platform. That's amazing. You could literally have a huge market in just images. And that's it. You don't need content. You don't need video. You don't just images. You have to find what works for you, where your consumers are, how they connect and use it best. Well, I mean, listen, you and I will go for a beer and talk about how brand X just sucks the bag, and we'll just say it, night and day, and someone else will come in and hear it or overhear it and not buy something because we said something about a brand. The difference right now is suddenly there's a publishing platform that's free that enables everybody to share that opinion. So the reality is that, if your brand was great, now that the world of publishing for free is available, doesn't suddenly mean your brand sucks. It means your brand sucked before, and that you just couldn't hear. And so these digital channels are actually like a Marshall stack amplifier. If you saw the movie Spinal Tap, they go to 11, right? It's a huge guitar amplifier, and we can just hear all the voices. And so my general message is, well, if people are saying bad things, it's probably because they were always saying bad things, and now you can just hear. Suddenly, it's like having your earplugs removed, and suddenly you can hear everything. Before, if somebody complained to a company, that letter would be filed in customer service in a filing cabinet somewhere, and that would be it. Now when someone complains online, it remains a permanent record of Google. It's part of that permanent thing. So if someone's ever searching and searching deep enough, perhaps they might find that. And so, just sort of embracing that idea that people were saying bad things anyways, that's reality. The other side of it is actually really fascinating, which is we have some friends at a company called Bazaar Voice in the US, and what they provide is third-party audited peer reviews. So when you go onto a site like Amazon or Walmart and you see a review from somebody, it's usually been third-party audited through this company. Why third-party audited? Well, they ensure that it's not an employee writing the review. They ensure that it's a legitimate person. They will protect against things like bad language and religious stuff and all that. And this has become a very big company. They've served over 10 billion peer reviews in the past little while, 10 billion. Out of a rating of 5, which is the maximum you can give something 5 stars, the average in 10 billion is 4.5, which means most people are saying really, really good things. But here's the crazy part. The crazy part is this, that a negative review converts more effectively to a sale than a positive review. Now, why does that happen? Well, it happens because a lot of times if you're reading a book and you tell me how great it is, I just look at you and go, I don't really like you. And the book that your perspective on the book has zero meaning to me. Or you might say that this camera that we're using here that I'm looking at buying, and you're like, I'm a professional videographer. This video camera isn't good for that. It's good for home videos. Maybe I'm buying it for home videos, and that's exactly what I want it for. The third layer of that, which is the most interesting, is that it builds trust. So if a consumer's on your site and they read a bad review, they're more inclined to buy from you because they feel you are being transparent. They feel you're being honest. And so they'd much rather do business with someone saying, this isn't so good, but you might want to try this one. And that's sort of the big stomp out for anybody who says, well, I don't want to be online because people are going to say bad stuff about me. Newsflash, you shouldn't be online. You should be working on your products because your products suck. I think the world is global. That sort of sounds stupid to say, but I mean, we do. We live in a global economy. And my general message to people is you never know who someone knows who someone knows. And we tend to think like, oh, I don't want to sell anybody anything outside of Quebec or Ontario or whatever. But maybe there is somebody in France who is looking exactly for the solution, is willing to buy a white label version of it, doesn't affect your business, but suddenly can make you a millionaire. They would never know that you existed were not for the internet and the power of these channels to connect. And I think there's something tremendously powerful and serendipitous about a world where people are actively looking. And it's, I have a friend of mine, his name is Hugh McGuire, and he has a great project called LibriVox, and he does a lot of business stuff. And he says, don't blog to be known, blog to be knowable. And it's very, very true. I think that digital channels really allow that, where it's not just about, I'm doing this so I can have X amount of traffic or whatever. I don't, although I do look at my Technorati ratings and where I'm ranking and stuff, because there's a bit of ego involved in it. The primary reason I do blog, and why I started blogging originally, back in late 2003, is because I want it to become knowable. I want people who are looking for digital marketing, personal branding, online marketing, whatever it might be, to find me. And that's what it was about. And I think if people flip it a little bit and think less about trying to get known and to be more knowable, be the type of person that people want to connect to, the type of, if a community is a wheel, it's better to be the hub than the spoke. And so how do you become a hub? And it's by becoming knowable, by expressing yourself and connecting efficiently.